Hey, welcome to my channel, DIY Dream Dollhouse. Today we are going to be making these beautiful miniature wedding cakes, and kind of Beetlejuice theme with the beautiful purples and black and white. To get started, I went around the house and found all these caps. There's that one's from the garage. We got leftover, whatever I could find. Just thinking of round wedding cake tiers. Those ones are for the juice containers, peroxide, uh, bottle cap, just whatever I could find. These glue, those are glue caps for the little glue sticks. So just things you'd have around the house, and I transformed them. So to get started, you have to figure out your scale. Um, that's obviously too big. You don't want something that's going to be bigger, and you don't want to make it and then it not fits. You need to find the table you're going to set it on first. Um, I have two different tables that I'm working with, so I'm going to make two cakes and see how it goes. So we got the bigger table is going to use the juice cap as the base one, and then layer it from there. That is a Bacardi rum, rum and Coke. Yeah, that one's going to be the base layer for the smaller cake. And then I just tiered them, starting with the larger size after I figured out the table that I was going to use. So we have I believe it's a Bacardi rum, the Fiji water, and then a glue stick. And then for the other cake, it's a cranberry juice. I forget the second lid. Then a Coke, and then another glue stick lid. And those are going to be the tiers, so you can kind of see what I started with. So I tried to make it so you guys could kind of see what I was doing, but then it's also upside down, so you're looking straight down. So yeah. All right, we figured out the layers of our cakes. We'll put the other stuff down for something else. All right, so we've got our two cakes that we're going to be making, miniature. It's so fun. All right, so this here shows the texture of the sides, which is very helpful when you're painting. If it has a neat texture or something. Oh, okay, so right here, I'm showing the little pointy things that attach to the bottle when you pull the cap off. It keeps it on. Well, those are going to interfere with the glue process unless it's flat. It was flat on the glue sticks, but all the rest of them have a little bit of a little edge, and it'll be really hard for it to stick, so we're going to get rid of it. I had some leftover sandpaper from sanding my fence this summer, and I just used that to wear down the little pointy things on the caps so that it would stick to the glue, or the glue would have, it'd be able to stick better. Made sure it wasn't sharp or anything. Careful with that one. That one was a little bit easy to cut yourself, so be very careful with that one. But I just sanded it off a little bit on all the ones that had those little pointy things so that the glue had more surface area to stick. Yeah, that's a Fiji water lid, and it has those little teeny tiny things. And you wouldn't think it would be a big deal, but when you're doing miniature things, you need to kind of be mindful of, because you don't want to put it together and then it fall apart. So the more surface area you have for the glue, the better. All right, so I got that part all done. I clean up my mess a smidge. I use my scrap paper over and over. That way I can, yeah, so I can save and not waste, and my craft table's underneath. So if I make a mess, which I always do. All right, so we're going to start with one at a time. I wiped off a little bit of the dust that I had made so that the glue doesn't, it can stick better. But while I was wiping them off, I realized that the top is a little bit rounded, and the levels may not stick too well. So I ended up using the sandpaper again on the top to kind of rough up the tops of them because I wanted to make sure that they didn't peel off. You can kind of see there was like a little bit of a gap. Well, I guess you can't really see it. It's really hard to see. But I used the sandpaper again on the top to kind of rough it up a little bit because I really want it to stick together. I don't want it to fall apart. So by giving it this little rough area, it has more places for the glue to kind of attach. And I do like a little bit of planning. I mean, you don't want to, you kind of want to have all your pieces ready before you get out your glue. And I'll show you why in a little bit. It kind of dries really fast. So you have all your stuff ready to go before you move on to the next step. Kind of, it just helps because I've made a lot of mistakes and then had to take it apart to redo it. So I use several types of glue when I'm crafting, but today I'm using the E6000, and I would have bought clear, but I didn't notice that it was white. So I'm going to buy clear next time, but we're going to go ahead and use this white for now. I like using a toothpick to put the glue where I want it, because if you try and squirt it out, you usually get way too much. So we're going to put the glue on the edge of the edge of the cap rather than the top of the cap, and you'll kind of see why. You can put the glue exactly where you want it to go, and then you know you're not going to have all this extra. So I take the toothpick and I just carefully rub it along the edge so make sure it gets the whole thing covered, but not too much. So I just keep using the toothpick, and this glue dries pretty quickly, so I tried not to get too much. Oh yeah, had to put on some glasses. I couldn't see very well. The glue starts to dry and get really sticky, so I try not to use too much at once, but obviously I didn't get enough, so I squirt out a little bit more so I can at least finish this cake before it gets dry. And the thing that put the glue on, it's just a piece of trash that I had I got something in a box, and it was kind of the shiny side, so it almost repels the glue a little bit, but I'm also not wasting a brand new plate every time. So all right, so you take the top lid, put it to the bottom cake layer, and try and center it as best you can, because you want to look down at it and make sure that it's the same on all sides. And I guess you could use other types of glue. I use different glue, but this one seems to hold pretty well so that you can keep working quickly. I'm wiping off the extra globs of paint just because you'll be able to see them when I do the paint on top of it. So, the extra globs of glue, excuse me, yes. When I paint on top of it, you'll be able to see the glue. So I get the big globs off. And I get a little piece of paper towel to just wipe off the extra. Because when you paint on top of it, you're going to see all these little textures, and you don't want a bunch of globs of glue. All right, so I go ahead and I sped this up a little bit because it's the same process. I just add each layer a little bit at a time. And stick it on, so you make sure it's centered. Clean off all the goop. Making sure it's still looking how I want it to. And then we're going to add the top tier of the cake. It's an Elmer's glue stick. Well, it was an Elmer's glue stick. I go through lots of glue. All right, clean up the goop, ready to go. Awesome. Then we're going to do the same thing with the other one, and then we're going to paint them. I spray painted these clear coat, gloss coat, and it took like 2 hours to dry. So I did a few other projects while I was waiting, but this is trying out the different accessories or decorations that I want to put on. I do the decorations first to kind of see how I want it to go before I put the paint on it. I don't apply them yet. I just get it ready so that I kind of know the theme and what I want to do with it before I paint it, making sure that the paint's going to match what my decorations are. I lifted up the paper there so you could see that I had a plastic mat. Couldn't really tell, but I have a plastic mat under the paper right there so that I don't cut into my table. All right, so I have all the decorations ready for that one. And while I was waiting, I did some practicing of another project. I was painting some little presents that are going to be a different video. And so I made some matching presents to go with my wedding cake. So I'll show the video as soon as I get that one all finished. But so they're all going to match. I used this beautiful pearlescent paint to go over top of it. It comes across kind of a purpley color, but it's really just white. But it looked really pretty on the presents, so I wanted to use it on the cake as well. I kind of tried to show that I didn't have very much paint on my paintbrush, but I couldn't figure out where the camera was. So I start applying it very lightly, almost like I'm doing like an eyeshadow a little bit. If I went in too deep, it would go into the grooves, and I kind of wanted to just do it on the edges and leave the inside of the grooves a black. So I'm using a teeny tiny bit of paint on each time, and then I'm kind of using the extra paint on the cake itself to go up the layers a little bit. You just keep smearing my brush is completely dry. There's like very tiny, very, very little bit of paint on it. When I get too much, I dab the extra on the paint or on the on the plate. All right, so I got them both finished. I put my paint away, and now I can start putting on the decorations that I'd already picked out. This was some really pretty ribbon that had a plastic, almost like a rubber. It's supposed to be for like wedding dresses, and you can use an iron to seal it, I guess, to the fabric. But I thought it'd be really fun for a little miniature wedding cake. So I trimmed off the extra. I would have used the E6000 for that. But then I remembered it's white, and if I put the white under it, you would be able to see through the clear plastic that the rhinestones are actually attached to. So I went ahead and used my glue gun, but I had to be really careful because it kept trying to melt melt the rubber, I guess, that it was stuck to. So it was kind of tricky. I'll definitely get some clear for next time. But I really liked how it was turning out. Some of it was like a little tricky because it's not exactly the same. You know, one of the backs didn't have all of the rhinestones. One of them had one too many, so I had to trim it off. But that'll just be the back of the cake, I guess. You can't really tell unless you're looking super close, but make sure you're really careful when you're using hot glue. I've gotten huge burns from using it. That's why I use tweezers a lot, because I've burned myself too many times. All right, so for this other cake, I really wanted it to look like a real wedding cake, just miniature size. So these are some of my, I guess they're like dried flowers. And then the other ones I'm going to be using, I bought in the floral section at the hobby shop, or the hobby craft store. And you get like 100 flowers for $5.99, and I got it 40% off rather than getting it from the like the Dollhouse section, you don't get you're paying for them to do it. So I like making it myself. I find a lot of my stuff not in the Dollhouse section. So this is just some regular black ribbon. I had some smaller ribbon, but it was too small. So I opted for this size because it seemed like it was, the other one was too small. Some are too big. You want to make sure it kind of matches to scale. So I used black ribbon on the edges of it. And again, I didn't want to use the E6000 because I didn't want it to have white coming around. So it was hot glue, which meant it was kind of messy, but you get those little glue strings you got to get off, but it worked out okay. I just kept going, putting the black ribbon around. Thought it looked elegant and helped, just hide any of those flaws that you kind of see with the extra glue or the goops, all that. But just trimming it off after sometimes I trim it before I put it on and then it's too short. So I've kind of learned to leave it in one piece and trim off what you don't need. All right, so this is some dried flowers that came in the mail the other day. I was going to use them for something else, and I thought they'd be really pretty for this. So I trimmed it off into a bunch of teeny tiny little pieces, and the back of the cake could be where you had all that extra glue. But I also thought maybe if we put the glue on top of it and cover it with these things, then it'll be 360 beautiful because you're covering up the ugly glue parts from where you attach the ribbon. So I just, little bit at a time, added these beautiful little flowers to kind of how I see the cakes at the store. When you go to the store and they have these beautiful cakes up, and I watch the cooking shows and the people, the bakery uh, pastry chefs and whatnot. They make these beautiful things. So I, as an homage to them, um, they just keep doing it until it's finished. And so I just kept adding little bits and pieces. These ones that didn't have any flowers on them, I saved them because you want to have a little bit of height and depth. So sometimes it can help fill in the spaces. So I kind of save all those little things. You never know what you're going to need it for. I wanted a few more, so I cut off a few more. And if you cut off one big piece, it's going to look like one big piece. But if you cut them into smaller pieces, then it looks more realistic, more to scale, I guess. And it doesn't work for all things, but this one specifically, it turned out pretty good. All right, here's when I use the kind of bigger pieces without any of the flowers on them to put underneath the other stuff. So I don't waste the pretty flowers. I put the other ones underneath it to kind of give it some height, so it has something to lay on top of. Just teeny little bits of glue. And those are cream colored flowers rather than the white, because they matched the dried flowers better. So I used the cream colored ones as opposed to the really white ones that I showed you earlier. And get off all the extra glue, and then I realized it needed a little bit more here and there, and then I noticed I had forgotten to put the ribbon around the top tier. So I have to add it now, but that's okay. See the little the little glue is pulling the yeah, yeah, the little glue strands from the hot glue. Yeah, I use my tweezers so I get exactly where I want it to be, so I don't burn myself. And part of the paint had come off, so I didn't want to take off anything. I just added to it. So it was a lot of fun to make. I think it just came out really good considering it's a cranberry juice cap and like a glue stick lid. It was a lot of fun. All right, so now I use the white ones on this one, so they look a little different. I cut off some of these little plastic pieces from what was a plastic leaf on something else, and just assembled them on the top, a little bit here and there, so that they look a little different. And so cute. It was a lot of fun. All right, so look, we're ready for a wedding. Ah, yep, a lot of fun. Now you guys can make one. Thanks for watching.